Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for the September 22nd Litestar Office Hours. We're going to take questions from the community, answer some questions on the future of Litestar, and give a little bit of update on the migration for the SQL Alchemy repository to use the new Jolt organization's Advanced Alchemy package. As always, thanks for joining us. If you want to tune in next week, we'll have office hours then, or you can catch the recording afterward.
All right. Yeah, I think we wanted to talk a bit about what we have been doing regarding our roadmap and what we are currently discussing there. Not like we have any concrete plans for that at the moment.
And I think,
But
yeah, I think it would be good for us to talk through it, right? Because I know we want to get some additional feedback from Peter now that he's back, but we've at least kind of thought through what we want to do over the next couple of months, and I think we've got a good at least foundation there that we can talk through.
yeah, I think we should maybe start with that. For anyone who hasn't noticed it by now, Peter Schutt is back on the project. He left a few months ago as a maintainer. And, well, we have managed to get him back, and he's already been doing work, and we are very, very happy to have him back on the project because he's been very valuable in the past. He's contributed a lot to the project and done many great things. GTOs, for example, were his doing, and so it's very good to have him back. It's going to be a
100%,
bit.
and the origins of the repositories too were some of the work that he and I did. So I'm super excited to have him back.
Yeah. It's probably going to be a bit difficult to have him on the office hours regularly, just because he's located in Australia, not the. I don't know what time it is there at the moment. I think it's in the middle of the night right now, so I don't know, maybe we'll do office hours Australia then at some point. I think there was one audience member from Australia last time, right? If I remember that correctly.
I think so. I
So
believe it
maybe.
was Catboy.
Oh yeah, Catboy. Maybe he's interested in that, and those two can have a chat. All right. So, do we just want to go over what we currently have quickly?
Yeah, and it may be
then-
helpful to talk a little bit about Jolt as well, and where why things are in there and what we've moved over there, and then
Mhm.
however else you want to describe it. But yeah, I think it would be helpful to at least go through that.
Yeah, I mean, we recently merged the first Jolt project into Litestar. So, right. Well, a few of you might have noticed that there's a new thing going on with Jolt, the Jolt organization. And we started that because one thing that we wanted to achieve was to be more open, because we believe we have a lot of great things built in Lightstar, and, well, a lot of them aren't necessarily tied to Lightstar, or don't have to be at least. The first thing we did there was the SQL Alchemy repositories, for which we have created the Advanced Alchemy project over at Jolt, which now includes the repositories as well as the Lightstar integration that was previously in the Lightstar package, but it also includes the Starlet, Fast API, and Sanic integration, which offers the same stuff we previously had for Lightstar, just for these other frameworks, and we're planning to expand that in the future to, I think we had talks about Socketify Quart was mentioned as well, and I don't know, a few others if we, I don't know, get to it or someone requests it. But yeah,
and
that's the
I'll
idea.
also add in
So
we in one real quick plug in there that we added a couple of new features with the release of Advanced Alchemy as well. So the first thing that you're going to notice is if you use the Lightstar plugin, then you automatically have the database CLI Alembic commands that are all integrated. So that's now finished and implemented. So you'll be able to actually execute your migrations, generate your migrations, and apply them for using this Litestar CLI all in one spot. And so now, if you've got that enabled in your own main, you should be able to see that as you're running it. The other thing that, well, actually, I'm drawing a blank on the other thing. So, Yannick, I'm going to hand back over to you, and I'm sure I'll think about it in just a second when I say it. But there was one other thing. Oh, now I remember what it was. Sorry. We implemented an optimize upsert mini. And so previously, what we had done was really kind of naive and just kind of iterated through the list of items we had and called the same merge command that we had before. Now we start with a select statement to figure out what keys already exist. And then we dynamically do an update all and an insert all with your data. And so it's actually quite a bit faster than what it was before, especially if you've got large lists of data that you're trying to upsert. And then we'll just continue baking in new features though over there. But yeah, so you guys should see some of these benefits when you whenever you start testing from main.
One thing that we also added that's currently not in the Litestar plugin, but it's already in the Starlet Fast API plugin, which we are planning to add to the Litestar plugin, is support for multiple configurations at the same time, which enables you to not only use synchronous and asynchronous with a single plugin instance, but it also enables you to use multiple databases at the same time, which is really neat because SQL Alchemy isn't that great when it comes to managing multiple databases. So, for example, if you have a read replica, you can very easily set that up just by including another configuration and then requesting a dependency for that other session that's bound to the other database. So to Litestar soonish, I think. We have that already planned out. We just need to implement it.
And one thing to add to that, that's a really good point. In doing this, the repositories themselves will end up having a configurable or two configurable sessions, maybe like a read session variable and a write session variable. And so in theory, you really now have from engine creation all the way down to execution, you have the ability to control which session is actually going to do the selecting, which one will do the actual DML operations. And so one of the things that I've noticed is there wasn't really a good way to manage all those connections, especially if you're doing you've got like multiple read pools in Postgres. And so now this will let you actually do that and still use the same repository and not have to actually change any of your configurations.
I think the next thing that's on our list, and it's going to be a bit more complex than attacking the repositories, but we want to make the DTO stuff available as a standalone library as well. DTOs are at the moment tightly integrated with Litestar, and that's going to stay. So same as with the repositories, you're not going to lose any functionality you currently have in Litestar. But we think they are quite useful and quite valuable to other frameworks, or even outside frameworks. I think in the last couple of days, we actually had a few issues pop up on Discord that were related to message spec, where having DTOs would have actually solved the problem. But since they're tied to Litestar, it's a bit inconvenient to use them outside of that. And well, for that, especially for that, having Peter back is is a really good thing. And another thing about the DTOs that I'm quite interested in is I have been working on speeding up the DTOs quite significantly. So we're talking about up to 500% increase in performance for the transformations. And I have done a few tests, and for certain operations, our DTO transforms are actually slightly faster than the native Pydantic transforms, for example, for renaming fields. And we can achieve that with code generation. So I really believe that these things have great value outside of Lightstar as well. So that'll be one of the next larger things that we are tackling. And I think the overarching topic here is we want to open up Lightstar. We want to open up the features that we have built and make them more readily available for the wider community. And what we are also trying to do, we currently have the contrib namespace, which contains quite a lot of features. And we are looking into resolving that. So either the features that are in there will move to the Lightstar proper namespace, or they will become their own standalone libraries. I believe when it was initially created, the contrib namespace was meant to be for third-party integration things, but it was never really done properly. So we had some third-party integrations in there and some not, and it just became a bit of a mess, if we're being honest. So there's not really a clear distinction between what should go in there and what shouldn't. So yeah, we're definitely looking into cleaning that up. And we're hoping to, well, we have already started doing that. At the moment, nothing will change because we're in the 2.0 release, so nothing will break. But with the 3.0 release, the contrib namespace will go away. At least that's our plan.
I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the just kind of performance things that you've been testing as well with between Rust and MyPyC and just some of the surprising results I think that you've been posting on the channel. Maybe others would want to hear a little bit about it, but I was impressed with your findings.
Yeah, I can. So I have been doing some experimentation because I wanted to see one of the things that we had talked about, which almost every ASGI framework does. There's quite a lot of data structures that you need for an ASGI framework, and everyone just builds their own because there's not really a library out there that has them all. There's various libraries that have bits and pieces from everything, but there's not really one library that is a one-stop shop for these. So that was another thought that I had for something that might be of value. So I looked into that and I thought, well, might as well make this high performance thing. So I did some experimentations with a few data structures that I implemented in Python, just pure Python, and then compiled that with MyPyC. And then I wrote the same thing in Python and then in Rust with the Pyo3 bindings. And I was quite impressed by the performance that MyPyC was able to deliver. For a lot of the things, it was faster than Python, even with quite a lot of time I've invested in optimizing it. And in some cases, it even outperformed the Pyo3, the Rust implementation with Pyo3. I'm at the moment trying to profile and figure out what exactly is slow about this stuff in Pyo3. But my suspicion is that MyPyC is simply very, very good at interfacing with Python's C API. And especially if you have code that spends most of its time interfacing with Python. And you can't actually do a lot of the heavy calculations in C or Rust. You don't really benefit a lot from using a lower level language like Rust or Python. So yeah, you might as well just use MyPyC for that, at least from the little bit of testing that I did. Which leads me to a few ideas that I had, because well, compiling with MyPyC, it's quite easy. you can just continue writing Python code and you get speedups almost for free. So that's something I want to look into, doing that for Litestar. We have experimented with that in the past, and it doesn't work out of the box for the whole code base, but I believe there are quite a few parts which we could speed up. For example, the DTO stuff, we could speed up our data structures and our internal routing. So yeah, as far as performance goes, that's something I want to look into next, probably after the DTO code gen stuff is done.
And I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, hypothetically, and maybe there's a reason why this can't work. Can there be a mix and match of, let's say we want to take this module and turn it into MyPyC, and then take another module and use Pyo3 to do it? Not saying this is what we want to do, but is that something that's even feasible at this point?
Yeah, sure. There's nothing preventing us from doing that. I mean, they both work a bit differently, right?
Yeah.
But for MyPyC, you can basically just point it at any file or any submodule, and it will just compile that into a C extension, and it works in place. So no issues there. And well, with Pyo3, it's a bit different because you have to set up a completely new project. You have to set up a Rust project and stuff. If we were to do that, if we were to introduce that, I wouldn't introduce it into Litestar itself as a package. I would probably then do that as a standalone package, just because it's easier to manage. Because then you also have to manage the whole Rust toolchain and deployment and testing for all the various build targets and whatnot. And I wouldn't want to have that in
That really
Litestar,
makes the
just for-
MyPyC thing a lot more compelling. The fact that you can literally just continue writing Python and get these incremental performance enhancements by compiling is pretty slick.
Yeah, I mean, even for the cases where it isn't as fast, I feel like, I don't know, as long as the Rust version isn't 10 times faster or something, it's probably just not worth it, right? If it's like, I don't know, 0.25 times as fast, that's not really worth the hassle. Then I'll just...
But in all cases, the compiled code outperformed the original Python.
Yeah. Of course. Oh no, that's not true. I managed to write a Rust implementation of a multi-dict that was slower, but that was just because my Rust implementation of the multi-dict was really bad.
Got it.
So that's obviously something to keep in mind, right? Just because you write in a lower level language doesn't mean you can write bad code and it will magically be faster. You still have to write. Well, code that performs good. So if that's the issue, that's obviously what you should tackle first. That's also why I'm saying, before we go to that level, I want to try other things like the DTO code generation or code generation for the router, because that's a lower hanging fruit, obviously. And if that's still not fast enough, then you can apply your compilation step on top of that.
Cool.
I was reading some questions here. Oh, you already answered. Okay, good.
Yeah, I did answer the question we had on the session config, and maybe just to talk to that one. The way that we kind of envision it is right now, if you configure the plugin, it has a spot for the config that can just accept a list of configurations at that point, and it would just ensure that each one of those configs gets a unique dependency key, so that when you go to use one of those dependencies or inject it into a route, you have a name that you can reference. And then we'll obviously tie that into the repository so that it knows how to fetch the right session names based on what you've sent it. So So to the question about can you just use it without the repositories? Absolutely. You just then would have to manage your the way that you fetch your session and use it how you want to, as opposed to just passing it through the repository.
Yeah, the repositories, they will just offer some level of integration for multiple sessions. But the repositories themselves aren't even tied to the SQL Alchemy plugins at all. You can just use them without. All they want is a session. And what would change then is that they accept two sessions, one for write and one for read. Where they come from doesn't really matter as far as the repositories are concerned.
I didn't want to mention them first because they're certainly not the most important things on the list, but I actually have 3 small plugins that should be coming out relatively soon, and maybe you guys have seen pieces of them in some of the example apps I have. But one of them, the first one is an async PG plugin that lets you just use the raw async PG database connection, very similarly you would with the SQL Alchemy plugin. That's actually almost done. I just need to write the test cases for it. And so for those that don't want to use an ORM, this is an option for you. Another thing that I've been working on is a set of tools for making working with Google Cloud a little bit easier. And so there's, for instance, we've got an IAM authentication middleware that supports the identity access proxy that Google has. And there's a couple of other little tweaks that I've kind of come up with around my deployments for the past year, and figured it would be good to share those with the community. And so I think it's called Litestar Google Tools or something like that. And so that'll be something that comes out soon. And then the other thing, which it's going to take a little bit more, but I've got most of it in a finished state, is the SAC integration. And so I just need to actually finish abstracting that into a plugin from what you see in full stack, but it's almost there. And then we just need to add a few test cases. But having that at least initial integration is something I'd like to cross off the list soon. Well, anything on your mind?
Hmm?
Go ahead, Yannick.
I don't think so. Right. So another topic. I have just more code-specific questions. Well, ask away.
And that goes for anybody, right? If, this is any questions you guys have, any code you'd like us to look at or weigh in on. We'll do all that.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. So I have some questions. I'm building my first app with Litestar, and these just pop up as I go. One of them is when using the session authentication middleware. It takes a handler function that, based on the given session, retrieves a user, right? And the thing is that within this code, the dependency injection doesn't work. So when I needed, for example, a database session, because I was using the SQL Alchemy init plugin, I needed to go into the app instance and grab the dependencies out of there. Would it be possible to make them work inside of these handler functions?
Yes. Well, it's not possible at the moment, but it's something we want to do. It's unfortunately not easy. The issue is that our dependency injection at the moment is heavily tied to the request itself. And it also needs the request and a route handler to resolve the dependencies. What we want to do this is probably not a short-term thing, but it's a bigger project. But the vision we have is that you should be able to use dependency injection basically anywhere. Also independently from any of the handlers or the requests or whatever. And for that, we would want to introduce different scopes so that you just have a global scope or an application scope And then you have a lifecycle scope that's tied to the lifecycle of the server or your app, and then the classic request scope. So that you could then either easily enable dependency injection in, well, most places that we currently don't have dependency injection, because dependency injection is missing from a lot of places right now, like middlewares or hooks or whatever. So we definitely want to get that in there. But also it would enable you to resolve dependencies manually everywhere you have access to the app object. So you could just use that and call the dependency container directly and say, I want this dependency, please resolve it for me. And it will gladly do that as long as it's in the global or app scope. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, this is a very complex thing and won't be available in the near future. So the way you're doing it right now is the best way to handle that at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And another question was regarding to exception handlers, because in the documentation I can read that they can also be on a middleware layer, but I couldn't figure out. Maybe I just can't see that how to attach some how to attach exception handlers to middleware layer. Because, for example, with the authentication session, there are some exceptions that get thrown where the session is not found or when a user couldn't be retrieved. And I would like to react to this situation, like if I could react to them in not rely on the exceptions that are thrown, but react to them in some way, or like handle them with my own code or with other middlewares.
I think that's a question where a bit of example code would be more helpful, because I'm not entirely sure I can follow what you are trying to achieve.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when I use the authentication, the auth session middleware, and the session is not found, so the user ID or the session is empty, or no user couldn't be found based on the present user ID. Basically, the handler function returns none. Then I get some exceptions that I do not have control over. It just returns like a message with like no user could be correlated with the current session or something like that. And that is something I would like to customize or react or catch or react in a different way. Maybe I'll just you don't have to answer right now. Maybe I'll just ask on the forum later with some code examples.
Yeah, I think that would be best.
If you Perfect. Yeah, I was just going to say that, and I'll be happy to look at it as well and see if we can figure something out.
Yeah. Okay. That's all for me for now. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions. Okay, we are getting another question here.
Yeah, that's something we've talked quite a bit about.
Old-fashioned user authentication.
Yeah, so right now we don't have a database backend for sessions. I think at one point we had a SQL Alchemy integration, but Redis is typically what we see most often. If there's a large desire to see something like that come back, maybe we can open up a feature request and figure out if there's a way to implement it quickly. But right now, what you've listed are the options.
I feel like the question mixes two things together, maybe. So because
Perhaps.
You're asking about authentication with username, password, with a database session. So just to be clear, when you say you're asking about a database-based session, you're talking about storing the session data in a database, right? All right. Yeah. So we currently don't have that. There's nothing preventing us from adding that. You can also very easily add a backend for that yourself. I believe we should have documentation on how to do that. Let me just. Yeah, so basically the server-side sessions, they use stores. And you can very easily just create a database store for yourself, which is just a class that implements a few methods to act as a key value store. And then you should be able to just plug that in to your session config and you're good to go. I'm going to link you the stores documentation here. And yeah, you can just define that as is shown here in the documentation. And yeah, I mean, we should probably add a database.
Yeah, I agree.
Store thing is probably mostly useful for session handling, but it also doesn't hurt to have, I guess. The question is whether we want to do that with SQL Alchemy or not.
Or just raw SQL.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to write that down.
And you know, you probably already seen full stack, but if you check that repository out, it uses a JWT based authentication, but you can follow it for how to set up your user models and all those other Django specific things that would be outside of the session. And it might be maybe one of the things that we should do is create an example app that actually uses session based auth instead of JWT, because I don't think we have an example of that session auth yet.
Yeah, I mean, more examples is always a good idea.
Anybody else have questions?
Template fragments.
I don't think so yet, but that would actually be interesting. And the way you would do it now is create a separate file with just the fragment pieces in it you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, at the moment not, but improving the HTMX support is also something we have on the radar, and we have already put on our roadmap draft, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Given how much it seems to have grown in popularity, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to have really good support for HTMX.
Yeah, and I mean, contributions are always welcome. So if anyone wants to take that on, feel free to do so. Oh, I see this
And also, if you
library
want to open up an
already
issue,
has a
yeah,
lot
I'm
of
looking at this.
integrations.
Really cool. I'm looking at this library now.
Well, could
So
also
this,
add
I mean, this looks like it's framework independent, right?
Yeah. You could also just add support for Litestar there. Maybe that would makes sense as well.
I'm giving this one a star. Thanks for sharing this. Thank you. Has anybody been building anything cool in Lightstar that they'd like to talk about? I'd love to hear what you guys been working on.
It'd have to be cool though.
No, it doesn't have to be cool. Anything is good. But I'm happy that people are using it. Nice. Other thing I'm interested in hearing from you guys about is what kind of features you want to see. What are the things that you're missing from the library, or what are the things that you don't like or are not working as well as you want to, that we could improve?
Lightstar Mail. Well, here's the thing about Mail. I never understood why something like Flask Mail exists. Could you? What's the use case for Lightstar Mail? What would that actually do? Even if it's just about interacting with an SMTP server, how would that be tied to the web framework? Which part of that would need integration with the web framework?
Maybe the templating?
More in-depth documentation. Yeah, I agree. More in-depth. I think both. Both. We talked about that last time already, but we definitely want to improve our tutorial section and the documentation in general. But yeah, there's also a lot of things that we don't really cover. For example, the type decoders and encoders, they're there, but they're essentially undocumented. Yeah, tutorial building a complete app from start to finish, that is definitely the plan. So if you look at what we have there, we have a tutorial that starts with building a very simple to-do applications with basically zero knowledge. And the plan was to make that a series of tutorials that you could follow that would build the same application it would evolve the application with different features. And the plan would be that if you follow this from the first to the last chapter, that you're familiar with all the important features of Lightstar and, well, how to build a fully fledged web application. I'm willing to help writing it, though. Yeah, I'd love to see contributions to the docs. Definitely. If you want to write about anything, or if you feel like something is useful, would be a good addition to the docs, feel free to just open a PR.
ETO is compatible with form data.
Are they incompatible with form data?
Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. What issues are you running into?
I think the issue is configuration. But I think that's not a DTO issue. That's a form data issue, because our form data handling configuration isn't that straightforward. So, and I think that just if you add DTOs on top of that, it's very inconvenient. So the solution would probably be to improve the configuration for form data. More in depth. Something like you may want to use the pattern then. Right, so this is a larger overarching topic for the documentation, that it's a bit all over the place, because the main thing we have, the usage guide, it's some parts of it are tutorials, some are how-to instructions, some are recipes. And so there's a lot of advice scattered around everywhere, but it's hard to it's hard to know where you should look for a certain type of thing. That's something I have been meaning to take on for a long time now, to separate the concerns of the documentation better. Yeah, but well, I haven't got around to do it, to be honest. But there as well, I'm happy for everyone who wants to help with that sort of thing as well. If anyone has some input or ideas how we could do that better, wants to take something of that on, please just feel free to open any PRs or just reach out and share your ideas. It's definitely helpful. Yeah, the fast API documentation for me I think it serves a very specific purpose very, very well. The tutorial that it contains, it's probably one of the most comprehensive and well-written tutorials for a web framework I've seen so far, which is really great. So that's definitely something. And yeah, we can learn from that. Let's leave it at that, maybe. I'll be right back.
We've been working on this roadmap. I think we said last week we would have it this week, but it's not quite where we want it. We don't want to put something out there just for it to be there. I think we're getting pretty close.
I don't think we actually said that.
Did we not say we would bring it this week? Oh, good.
Nope.
Forget what I said. We didn't say that.
Well, we are working on it. We said we'd like to have something this week to ourselves. We just didn't make it public, except from you now.
I didn't say that. I'll gaslight you until you believe it.
Well, okay. So now everyone knows we missed our own deadline.
Yeah. We're excited about it, though. There's lots of small and big changes in there that we think you'll be excited for.
Cody, you are muted, by the way.
No idea what was happening. Maybe you guys can hear me now.
Yeah, now you're not muted anymore.
Awesome. Okay. Well, whatever. So the question that I was asking was around Django's collect static. I feel like that's a feature that is missed by pretty much every framework except for Django, particularly the deploying of your static files to GCP or AWS S3 with Django storages. Is that something that you guys have already solved, or what is would you guys be interested in something like that? I'm kind of curious what everybody's thoughts are on that. It's something that I've been thinking about working on, but want to make sure that it's a useful feature for others.
I think everything I've ever used has had it uses internal storage somewhere. I've never had to use some cloud provider backend.
Well, just in general, the deployment process I think is really where Django can shine, because there's formal ways to do everything. And I think that with our Alembic integration now, we've at least got the database part of that as well. And so really what we're missing is the static assets deployment. And so I think if we can have an answer to that, we have a pretty compelling deployment process for Litestar applications, whether it's on cloud storage or not.
I mean, we do have the basic building blocks for that, right? We have a static file configuration, so we can easily know how to collect the static files and such.
Right.
Most
But to me, and Gista, that's exactly probably the right way to think about it. But to me, it would be nice if there was something to help with that deployment, right? Where you ran a command and it moved it over to a particular directory or uploaded it to an S3 bucket for you automatically.
Yeah,
Part of that
the
deployment
issue is basically that you want to serve the files differently in development than you want to serve them in deployment. Because normally in development you don't have your proxy or whatever server for the static file stuff, and then you have to manual build some scripts or I don't know, config in your Docker files or pipelines or whatever it is that you're using to build your applications to handle those assets. And yeah, that's something you might actually want your framework to do for you.
Yeah, it's certainly not as good as Django. You know, there's some really good engineering done in the Django ORM.
I think it depends, to be honest. I think Django migrations are very good as long as what they do out of the box is good. As soon as you have to go in and write something yourself or fine-tune the generated migrations, I very much prefer Alembic. But that being said, the stuff that Django generates for you is oftentimes more useful than what Alembic generates for you. So that's that.
Yeah. And I think there's probably a few places where we can make Alembic smarter with our integration. So for instance, when you add a new column to an existing table and you want to make it not null, you can't really run Alembic to do that, right? It's going to generate the alter table statement with a new column that is not null, but that's going to fail obviously because there's null values there. So you have to actually do that in two steps. One, make it a nullable column, update your data, and then enable the constraint, the not null constraint. And so anyway, we could automate that, I think, right? Where it instead of having it generate the original one, we can have it rewrite so it generates the 3-step process that alter, with the 2 alter statements. There are probably other little places like that we can improve, but you're right. I think there's still going to be some rough edges that just require manual edits in Alembic.
Yeah, exactly. It's more hands off with Django, but I mean that's generally the case with Django, right? It's more hands off. That's the whole point. And I think we'd like to introduce more of this hands-off experience into Lightstar, but without getting into your way more. If you, that's kind of the idea here. Another thing that we have talked about is we want to promote plugins more, because currently we have a lot of things that are functionally equivalent to plugins. There are certain middlewares that are comprised of a configuration object on the application object, and then the middleware itself, which could just be encapsulated in a plugin, which would, for one, remove one keyword argument from the application object, which has so many keyword arguments in the config, and it would just make it a bit easier to set that whole thing up. An example would be the static files configuration, or the templating stuff, or I don't know, the rate limiting as well, the caching. Those are all things that would better be served by plugins. They would just make everything a bit easier to set up and reduce clutter in the application object. So that's something we are working towards a bit. We will be working towards a bit.
Yeah, what about moving dependency injection out of the project into standalone?
I don't think so. If anything, we would use an external library for dependency injection in Litestar. There's nothing special about our dependency injection. It's actually fairly basic. The thing that makes it complex is that it's very heavily tied into some Litestar concepts. But when we are tackling the whole dependency injection thing, and if we get to a point where it's completely untied basically from the request lifecycle and the app specific things, so we are at the point where it could be an external library, I think it makes more sense to use something pre-existing than to just add another dependency injection library for the sake of it, because honestly, our dependency injection isn't all that interesting. It's a very, very boring dependency injection thing, basically. And there are some great dependency injection libraries out there. I've actually looked at a few recently. So if we were to do that, we would just use one of those. I can bring some examples for the libraries that would come into question.
Can we use any of those now on top of what we have? Just to Lycium's question about sharing between services.
Wait, just let me read the question. Standard.
And the top one you listed there, Rodi, is the Black Sheep dependency injection, and DI is from Adrian on the Pedantic team.
Dependency injection shared between all of our microservices. That sounds like a bad idea. That doesn't sound like something you would want with microservices, right? I mean, if you have dependency injection shared across your microservices, then... Oh, okay. Okay, now I get it. Right. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, I mean, so the dependency injection as it is doesn't make sense as a third-party library, so that's probably not going to happen. But if we were to adapt a third-party dependency injection library, well, it depends on what that library already offers, right? But maybe we'll contribute to that library and add the stuff that we need to make it work for Litestar there, or we create a thin wrapper package around that and make it available. But whatever we will be doing, our focus will be on making it available. That's kind of our goal. With the request session, can I mutate it as a dict, or do I need to use request session? No, you can just mutate it. What's happening with the request session is that it is a dict, and you can just treat it as a dict, and it will just save the state of the dictionary into your preferred storage backend at the end. The request set session is basically for when you want to replace the entire thing at once, or you want to unset it or something.
I think we're at our time for the week. Does anybody have any last questions before we go? And are we gonna do this next week at the same time, or what do you guys think?
I'm good with it at the same time. If there's a better time we can get Peter involved as well, then I'm also game for adjusting it. But think that these are helpful for everybody, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of communicate with you guys and hear back from you. So I'd like to keep doing it.
Well, for Peter, we'd have to do it quite a bit earlier or later, I think. Because right now it's 3 in the middle of the night for Peter. So I don't know, we'd have to do it like 5 hours earlier or later.
Seems like the only good time for the three of us would be like 8 a.m. for us, which would be 3 p.m. for you, 10 o'clock at night for him, or 7 in the morning for you, 3 in the afternoon for him, and midnight for us. That's like the only times that look like they're.
We'll also have to think about our audience. I don't know what time zones they're all in.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Yeah,
if
and
we,
if it's too much of a scheduling burden, we'll just keep it at the same time, and maybe have two meetings.
Yeah, I think for now we'll keep it at the same time, and we'll see.
Sounds good to me. Well, all right, guys. Thanks for dropping in and your questions.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining in this session of the Litestar Office Hours. We would like to keep this going, so if you want to join in with us next time, ask questions, or just come hang out, you can check out the Discord community's events at the top left, see what time we're going to have the next office hour session, join in, and come hang out with us.